I think it's important to acknowledge that it was wrong of me to suggest in any way, shape, or form that the world did not need a Toy Story 4. Toy Story 4 is brilliant. That is all. Except, for the review to follow in like 3, 2. Well, this looked kind of doomed, didn't it? Time was they had Rashida Jones writing this, it was some sort of animated rom-com, nobody was terribly enthusiastic about it, and then the man who mainstreamed computer animated features turned out to be, well, a little overzealous with the hugging would be the polite way to put it. Toy Story 4 seemed to just get a little buried under all that, and the first trailers for the eventual movie weren't helping that, to be honest. I mean, 4 movies in and the series really hasn't got past the whole Woody gets lost, Woody learns a lesson, Woody goes home thing. I mean, sure, it worked for Shrek, but come on, money for old rope here. As it pans out, Toy Story 4's got something just a little bit more to offer than that, and in fact it kinda winds up becoming the 4th act of a 3-act story you honestly never thought you needed, and being the most gorgeous and even most heartfelt one of these to date doesn't hurt it too much either, though it does seem to have a very weird attraction to mentally handicapped characters this time around that's a choice? Regardless, while you thought the story had ultimately ended with the toys moving on to a new home at the end of the last one, now it's time for the retirement story, and yeah, they brought the tears as per. So, Woody, Buzz, and the rest of the toys have now dedicated their days to caring for their new owner Bonnie, which is a task that the somewhat sidelined Woody takes a little bit too much to heart, resulting in the accidental creation of a new character called Forky. Forky, who's voiced by Buster Blue Tony Hale, is a spork with pieces of garbage glued onto him that Bonnie has unknowingly gifted with life after writing her name on his popsicle stick feet. Life he himself seems concerned only with spending being literal trash. But when Forky gets lost during a family vacation, Woody sets out to recover him, the whole road movie element, discovering not only the missing Forky, but also a long-lost friend along the way in the form of Bo Peep. And all those years in the wilderness have given Woody's ex more than a few newfound life philosophies to impart on our favorite cowboy, the lonely time in his life. So, there's that. Did I laugh? Hell yeah! Toy Story 4 actually features the single funniest gag in the entire series, courtesy of Key and Peele, no less. Did I cry? Buckets. Absolutely buckets at the end of this. So, yeah, it's a Toy Story movie. Damn good one, too. It's not the outright pinnacle of the franchise. I mean, 3 exists, so there's that for starters, but all the hallmarks of the Toy Story brand are all there, and they're shined up and glossier than they've ever been before. There's a Casablanca-like opening to this that's damn near perfect, just stunning to drink in and powerful to sit through, and it starts this forecaul off good and right. You're never in doubt that this is a sequel which more than justifies its own existence, and any potential cash-in sensibilities thankfully get drowned out by all the ahs and the lols. So the returning cast, they all remain flawless. Tom Hanks is just unchallenged as this generation's Jimmy Stewart, so says a friend of mine. Buzz Lightyear is still endearing enough that we can forget the man voicing him spent damn near the last decade playing what's basically a Republican court jester, and there's a great influx of new blood that includes Christina Hendricks as Gabby. There's a really fun Keanu Reeves, a sort of Canadian Evel Knievel named Duke Kaboom, Key and Peele as Ducky and Bunny, which is exactly as awesome as it sounds, Ali Markey as a Polly Pocket-esque sidekick named Giggle McDimples, and taking the medal for awesome services to action cinema, my personal favorite, Carl Weathers as the G.I. Joe-like Combat Carl, which apparently was Tom Hanks' idea, so he really is America's sweetheart. Conceptually, there's some brilliant stuff in there. Director Josh Cooley's making his ascent to the main stage with this one after cutting his teeth on some Pixar shorts like Riley's First Date, and because of that pedigree, it feels to its core like a proper Pixar movie, even if it does have a slightly harder edge to the to the comedy than usual this time around. That gag I'm so fond of here, that's a straight up Key and Peele gag, and that's in addition to gags about the sentience of these characters and the nature of their actual existence, something I genuinely never expected to see brought up in a Toy Story flick. And even though this does serve as a kind of ultimate ending for at least one aspect of this series, it does leave room for more to come, though I kind of live in fear of a Toy Story sequel years from now in which an adult Bonnie starts writing her name on other kinds of toys. Although, what about a lunchbox, meanwhile? That's gotta have a name on it. I mean, is that boxy? Does it have like the voice of Kenan Thompson constantly demanding to be filled? This is part of the reason that Lasseter got canned, isn't it? Anyway, it's got the magic of the Toy Story series, it's got the heart, the wit, the gravitas. Bonus point, it even includes some of the outright creepiest sequences since Sid's bedroom too, and I'm a big fan of all the sort of little details put in here too, like how there are numerous same-sex couples dotted throughout the background characters, and the way the toys themselves interact with the human world is as clever as it's ever been. It's even amped up a bit further this time out. It's just a really lovely, really sweet and touching movie. If it's the last one, great. I'm happy. Thank you, Pixar. You have 4 big shiny stars for this one. Just please don't make any more car sequels. So from one story about a Child's Play thing to another. Sorry Jack, Chucky's back, and everyone knows you don't with the Chuck. You evidently do remake him though, and here's the kicker. The 2019 remake of Child's Play may in fact be a terrible, terrible Child's Play movie, but it's actually a pretty decently fun movie in its own right, entirely outside of that. The Norwegian director Lars Klevberg's behind this. What you get is something closer to a Black Mirror episode gone theatrical, a comparison not really helped in the slightest by the new Chucky's integration with smart home technology, as if he's like Johnny Five lacking a browned up sidekick. That is totally true, by the way. That was Fisher Stevens in that movie. Wow. In this new iteration, we're ditching the whole supernatural serial killer angle, and we're going for something more of our time. So our new Chucky is what's called a buddy doll. He's a smart doll sent into the world with corrupted software and all his safety protocols turned off by what's really a disgruntled Foxconn employee who hurls himself to his death moments later. Try remember this moment the next time your iPhone develops a bug. Anywho, the deranged smart toy, which now comes to be equipped with the voice of Mark Hamill, finds its way into the arms of a 12-year-old single-parent kid, Andy Barkley, and the two soon become fast friends. But this Chucky is, well, let's just call him the murderously clingy type. So yeah, we've gone from Charles Lee Ray trying to do the astral shuffle to Christine with a killer Furby. But like I say, it ain't actually bad in the slightest. I actually had a pretty fun time. The deaths are pretty inventive. It's hilariously gory. Hamill's good fun as Chucky. Aubrey Plaza exists, and simply being reminded of that is a good thing. And there's a gag about a dead musician that'll bring the goddamn roof down in every screening. It's jumpy when it needs to be, chilling when it calls for it, laugh out loud funny when it could do with a little bathos. I liked it. Actually, the lamest thing about it actually is the Child's Play branding itself. See, what you get with this is a more small-town, anarchic, and broad horror flick with strangely global implications. More of that than you ever would have expected from the concept. It's probably closer to a straight-up horror take on Small Soldiers than anything else, which is hilarious since that actually was the original remit of the Small Soldiers to begin with. It's a decidedly bigger concept than the Child's Play movies has ever aspired to be. I respect the hell out of them for doing something different with it, but I do find myself wondering why, when it's so far removed from what's not really a mainstream brand to begin with, why you'd bother keeping that branding to begin with. In fact, you know what? Let's do this. See, there are two lessons here. The first is that it's always better to rip off than reboot or remake. Scott Mendelsohn writes about that all the time on Forbes, and if you take the Fast and the Furious series, the template's resoundingly true. Why bother remaking Point Break when you can just rip it off, do it with cars instead, and spawn what's otherwise referred to as an original franchise? They actually did remake Point Break after that. Did you see it? It was terrible. 100% pure melatonin. At the other end of that spectrum, though, are the remakes that should have been legacy sequels instead, like The Italian Job or RoboCop, the former of which was directed by, and this is true, F. Gary Gray, currently dazzling audiences with Men in Black International. Or not, as the opening weekend box office would suggest. The point is that both The Italian Job and RoboCop would have worked better as their own decades later, but with new character sequels, than as remakes. Child's Play 2K19 is definitely one that would have been better off as a rip-off going down the Jordan Peele Black Mirror line than it actually is, being Strand B of a now dual continuity franchise. Either way, it's got a good cast. Aubrey Plaza is great as, well, Aubrey Plaza. The newly aged up Andy, played by Gabriel Bateman, gets a little bit more to do than Alex Vincent ever gotten. He's quite likeable in a sort of, the losers from It kind of a way, which is an element definitely beefed up for this iteration. I'm also a really big fan of Bear McCreary's score, which which is apparently constructed of the literal sounds of children's toys, would you believe? I couldn't tell that when I was watching it, I just thought it was an awesome score, but big props for that little addition though. So yeah, the Child's Play remake won over me, the Child's Play fan. Not as being a passable Child's Play movie, it actually absolutely isn't, and I'd be shocked if the filmmakers had actually seen Child's Play instead of simply reading the Wikipedia page entry for it, but just for being an inventive and pretty romping little horror flick in its own right, strictly on its own merits, forgetting what the title is or the central character's name, 4 stars. You know, no guff, really, 4 stars, they earned it. I'll play it again on home release. Turned out to be a pretty good week for flicks, so naturally James Gunn's name's gotta pop up somewhere, and that somewhere is on Brightburn, which takes the basic concept of what if Superman but evil, and then drops the needle on what could be the most sadistic fun I've had at the multiplex so far in 2019. Not like Endgame fun, that's actual fun. More like John Wick 3 fun, nasty, grisly, hyper-violent fun that'll snap a neck to punctuate a gag, that kind of fun. There's some of that in cinemas this week, well, more of that I suppose after Child's Play, and best of all, it's got James Gunn producing it. So, you know, it's got some swagger too. So while the Nazis were taking turns on their arch nemesis, the man who wrote the Scooby-Doo movie, naturally, said nemesis was drafting in David Yarorevsky, kinda his number 2 guy to direct this little kind of part satirical spin on Man of Steel, part Mad Magazine pastiche, all-out bloodbath, and basically Carrie with superpowers. Brightburn's the best movie out this week, and if you didn't see it before watching this, stick me on watch later and haul your ass to a screening right now. Go, I can wait. But really, it's so good, right? So Elizabeth Banks and David Denham are an infertile Kansas couple who find a baby boy inside a crashed alien spaceship and decide to raise him as their own, only for said boy Brandon, who's played by Jackson Dunn, to begin to exhibit a number of otherworldly superhuman abilities the closer he gets to puberty, a time during which, it'll surprise you to learn, it's difficult to control one's impulses and hormones, doubly so when you're a member of a murderous alien race with the ability to drop buildings on people. So good. We need to treasure Yarorevsky, lock him up in some kind of emergency bunker and keep him honing his craft in solitude just in case we ever need a spare James Gunn. This guy's got it down. There's some inventive stuff of his own too, sure, but in the same way that Gunn himself took the umbrella of Lloyd Kaufman and started beating people around the head with it, Yarorevsky threatens to do the exact same thing with guns. Banks great, Dunn's pretty creepy to the extent that he goes full Brad Renfro on an apt pupil at one stage, and I have so much love for the way that this subverts a lot of genre conventions and plays with some pretty iconic and very specific imagery. I'd argue Brightburn doesn't totally work unless you're kind of in on the gag by actually knowing, and by extension being, you know, beyond sick of, the Superman origin story, but it should work well enough regardless. To be honest, if the biggest disappointment is the movie really has no more ambition beyond the basic remit, that is, something that becomes almost baffling when you reach the stage at which it could have explored, you know, a genuinely fascinating avenue in what would happen if you exposed a superpowered alien child to the same kind of environment that would otherwise birth a school shooter. It's a seriously missed opportunity, one I actually do hope gets made as a movie one day, but what Brightburn delivers instead is never less than jaw on the floor. Oh no you didn't. Awesome. I had a belter of a time, end to end with it. 4 stars, rock on, give me more like this. Also, apropos of nothing, there's a movie out this week called Robert the Bruce, and that thing is hilarious. So essentially, the dude who played Robert the Bruce in Braveheart wrote himself a sequel, produced it, starred in it, and now it's here. It's terrible. It's like watching a 2-hour piece of fanfic for that show Nightfall. But that any actor would do this full stop is insane. I mean, I get it when it's The Rock wanting his own Fast and Furious spin-off, but really, Angus McFadden? I mean, if Orlando Bloom pulled a Legolas movie out of his ass, y'all'd lose your damn minds. This somehow is funnier. Braveheart 2? Seriously? Come on! 1-star movie, very bad, do not see. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, rate, and review.